want to welcome up to the stage here our panelists, and I really appreciate that chat about making money at music. These three maybe didn't go into music to make a bunch of money to get rich, but that's why you did education, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, you went into teaching to get rich. How's that been? I actually was really, really impressed when I started adding up the amount of experience that will be on our stage in just 1 second here. I think we have over a century of music teaching experience in these three people, which, and in really different contexts too. So I'm not going to do much of an introduction for each one. I want to give them a chance to tell a little bit more about where they teach and who they teach and kind of the details, because I realized as I was looking through all of the incredible data that was pulled out of the MusicAlaska census, I would love to see that about music education as well. Not only who's playing where and what they're getting paid for it, but also who's teaching where and what they're getting paid for it, and how that works out as one of the planks in your raft. So real quick, we have Melissa Fischer, who teaches, yes. All of them deserve big rounds of applause. Melissa Fischer, Jazz Mom, is the choir director at East High School. Nick Petumenos wears a bunch of different hats, not just that one, which I might take from him because I really like, but so you have a few more hats, don't you? Nick is involved in Alaska Jazz Workshop. He's got his own studio. I went over to his house for a jam, and I did like not a double take or a triple take, like a 15 take, because there are at least 100 instruments in his house. How many instruments do you have?
Long since lost count.
Okay, yeah.
I know we're up to 51 guitars, which means we have to keep going to 100.
Yeah. I wasn't exaggerating. At least 100 instruments. He considers versatility his main instrument, if I'm correct. There we go. That's the way to say that. And Mary Schallert has been teaching for 58 years. I was blown away by that number. She started when she was, yes. Started when she was 12. I don't think I've been doing anything since I was 12, and I'm not 58, so very impressed.
50 cents an hour.
At 50
cents. 50 cents, so, let's be clear.
They each have really different backgrounds in terms of education as well, but I'm actually not going to go through all of that. We only have 25 minutes, and I'd love to try to stay on time. I will ask each one of them in turn where they teach, just kind of context, so that we can get an idea of where music education is happening. Whom they teach, so you were teachers, so I said whom, not who. Thank you. And then, let's just start with those two. I'm going to come back for a couple more questions. So from this side to that, since this is the order that they took the stage, whom do you teach, and kind of when, where, the context? So do you teach after-school programs? Do you teach in schools? Do you teach summer camps, like I know Mary started? Those two questions first.
So I am now in my 14th year of teaching at East High School. I had 16 years in the Anchorage School District and then 16 years of teaching privately out of my own studio. So right now I'm teaching grades 9 through 12 at East, all choir or all vocal. I have 4 choirs and 1 vocal technique class. And it's primarily in those hours from 8, now the times are 8:45 to 3:15 because we just changed our schedule this year. But after school commitments would be if there is a musical. We do a Broadway musical every other year. We do a show called Synergy every other year. So there are plenty of after school commitments as well. And then lots of concerts and community events where my elite group will sing, and that may be during the day or it might be in the evening. We have gigs that bring us out on weekends sometimes.
Well, let's see. I sort of kept track of this, I guess. I think my youngest private student was 3, and my oldest, my brother-in-law's father, decided to take up drums when he was 86. So I teach a lot of private lessons, ages 3 to 86. And I mostly teach from my home. I also see group classes there. My philosophy on teaching is that formal instruction, there's a bit of a chasm sometimes between actually doing the thing and instruction on the thing. So I've really been trying to break down the lines between education in a classroom and the professional stage is kind of one of my mission statements in life. So the Monday jazz session that we do over at Fire Island Bakery, I initially planted that because I wanted to not forget all the tunes I learned in grad school, but that very quickly turned into sort of a community teaching thing. And I guess I find that I'm teaching everywhere I go as a professional musician. I'm also a student everywhere I go as a professional musician, and I don't think there's anybody that you take the stage with who you don't teach and who you don't learn from. So it's kind of constant. It's more of a state of being than a location, really. But mostly I'm very blessed to just kind of stay home in my beautiful palace of instruments and have all kinds of awesome people come visit me, you know, for various amounts of time, and usually they leave me money. So
What he said. So the basic question is,
Whom do you teach, and the context? Are you teaching in summer camps? Are you teaching in public schools, private lessons, churches? Where are you teaching?
So my students, I've had everything from a three-year-old to, well, I don't know, maybe late 70s. I think you win on the 80 thing, but I'm not sure. And I teach private lessons at my house. I call myself a string girl, and that includes piano, but primarily violin. And I call myself a hybrid teacher because I teach, like, some kids will come to me and they want only classical, or some kids will come to me and they want only fiddle, and I try to teach both because I think both are important. And who knows? I say, I don't know where you're going to land when you're in college. You might want to be able to do both. So I teach whatever. I kind of try to figure out what the child wants or the adult wants, and so the private students in my studio, and then I have an orchestra of, how shall I say, grown-ups, and it's people who, it's like kind of a middle school, high school level, but they're people like in their 60s, give or take 10 years. Or we also have some younger people too, and we have this wonderful, who's actually here right now, fiddle player who wants to learn how to play cello, so he's learning the cello in our group because our music isn't too difficult. We're basically just doing it for the joy of it, and we give a concert once a semester. I taught orchestra at the Anchorage Waldorf School, and I had a camp that I put on for over 30 years, and it's the Alaska City Folk Arts Camp, and it's basically, the idea is how to teach kids to make their own music, where you don't have an adult managing what you're doing, that you can do it yourself. Because when I was 8, I was figuring it out, because I came from a huge family and no one's going to show me anything unless I figure it out myself. And I know that they can, and to give kids that opportunity. And I feel like there's so many things that kids do these days that are some grown-ups in there bossing them around, school, sports, everything. The grown-ups saying, go here, go there. And what I want the kids to do is to make their own musical decisions. And I've also taught with Dancing with the Spirit, and that's a wonderful program that goes all around the state of Alaska and teaches in rural Alaska. So I've taught in Rampart and Northway and Minto and different villages. I've been doing that for a while too.
You've gotten a little bit ahead of us, and that's okay. I'm
Sorry.
appreciating that, because you actually answered the other 2 questions that I
Okay.
was going to ask. The rest of
wasn't
them
sure how far to
already.
go.
She knew. We talked this through. We didn't. The other 2 questions, they're the next 2 rather, are what do you teach in terms of instruments, or if it's not I didn't even have a concussion. This is. If it's not an instrument, is it composition? Is it music theory? So what do you teach? And then also how? So you mentioned Waldorf. I know that is one, it's a philosophy behind teaching. It's not often associated with music. There's also, of course, the Koldai method. There's the Orff method. There's Suzuki. There's all these different ways of teaching music. So coming back to this idea of a music education census, if we can get an idea of where the gaps are in our own music education community, we might be able to fill those in. So we got 3 experienced people here. In the other direction, since you already answered this,
Okay.
What do you teach in terms of instruments, or if not instruments, what music thing? And then also how?
Well, I start most of my little kids with Suzuki, and that's because I decided that was a nice method. But what I discovered, the weakness of the Suzuki method, it's actually not a weakness, because Shinichi Suzuki said that you could teach, if you could teach children to speak fluent Japanese, you could teach them to play fluent music. So I thought, that seems like a really great idea. So he did that. The thing he took you could go online and see 5-year-olds playing the Bach double, which is like phenomenal. So they're playing by ear. The American teachers thought, oh, this is really amazing, and they bring it to the United States. And I'll never forget my Russian method violin teacher hating the Suzuki method because she would have kids in middle school that couldn't read music. And boy, my method was, when I was a child, was you either read or you don't get the tune. And so my reading is good, but I also learned to play by ear because I play fiddle. So what I do, like I said, I'm a hybrid. I teach a little bit of what my Russian method violin teacher taught me, the fiddling when I went to Levelland, Texas, and studied bluegrass music there for a year, and gone in bands and whatever. Anybody, hanging out with Ingvild, and she shows me a few things, and to go, oh, okay, I'll copy that, and so kind of pulling things in, and then teaching also my students how to do that. It's like you get to the end of book 1, Suzuki, and I go, okay, you know everything you need to know to play the fiddle. Do you want more lessons? You've got it all. If you keep playing, you have it. And they're looking at me like, wait, and there's lots of things I can still show you, but you got the basics. You can play in 3 primary keys, and what else is there?
Hanging out with Ingvild is definitely a great way to learn music, as is hanging out with probably most of the people in this crowd. I would love to make music with any one of you, by the way. So if you want to make music, please come knock on my door, grab my shoulder. So it sounds like, and I'm just going to pull from what you've already told me as well, teach a little bit of double bass and cello as well. Cello kind of in a pinch if it needs to happen, as well as viola, violin, guitar, piano, a lot of music theory, whether or not that's what they ask for, it's going to be part of what she teaches. And then where you mentioned your camp, you also have a private studio. I don't know, is the camp still happening?
It is. During COVID, of course, we didn't do it that year. And then after that, I scaled way down, and now I have about 30 or 40 kids at my house. I've really scaled down.
I love the idea behind that camp, by the way. I founded a camp with a similar proposition that you need to follow the student. Speaking of teaching methods, Maria Montessori said follow the student, and I think that needs to happen. Nick, what about you? What do you teach instruments, and then also how?
Yeah, so guitar is my strongest foot forward, and I consider myself a deep expert on guitar and bass.
Pause one sec, sorry. He has a DMA in jazz guitar performance from the Frost School of Music in Miami, where he was also a band leader. So yes, you do have a strong foot forward there.
Yeah.
Guitar credentials, right? But I've been teaching more and more piano as the years go by. It's really helped build me into a better pianist, which in turn, much better musician. Lately, I've been taking a lot of drum students. Essentially, when families contact me and they ask me to teach something that I am maybe an intermediate beginner on myself, I usually give them a healthy, solid disclaimer and say, I can give you the number of 3 people in town who are experts, and you might want to go see them instead. And then they usually say, well, you're in the neighborhood, and the kids really like you, and you have a good rapport, so you're our saxophone teacher. So now I teach saxophone, even though I've only been playing for a year. This is kind of been the recurring story of my life, and it's a big part of how I've built to having versatility as my main instrument. Is that people ask me to teach something, I say I don't really know how to do that, and they say, okay, well, we want you to teach it anyway.
Nick, could you teach me the hang drum?
Which the hangi?
The hang, yeah.
Yeah. First I would teach you the djembe, and then I would say, okay, now your djembe.
No.
Now your djembe has more pitches.
That's not what you said you'd say. You said you'd say, I don't really know how to do that.
But I do actually know how to do that. You just give it a spanking in the appropriate quadrant, and it gives you the pitch you want. Yeah?
We're gonna keep this PG.
But so then pertaining to that, right, is that when I'm at my best, my teaching does not come from my knowledge base. When I'm at my best, my teaching is really channeling. It's like bearing witness to a person, seeing into them what it is that they want to accomplish or what they're trying to do, and just bridging the gap with words. And it's almost like a lot of times when I'm at my best as a teacher, it's almost an out-of-body experience. I'm standing to the side and I'm like, this guy's good. He sounds like he knows what he's talking about. I would love to take a lesson from this guy, because it's not coming from me. It's like coming out of my mouth, and it's about them, and it's about where they're coming from and where they're trying to get to. And it's really, it takes all the hubris out of it. It takes the pressure off of your own knowledge to have like, oh, I've got the right answers to present or whatever. You just get you, and it's just very much the same way it is when you're performing at a high level and you get in a flow state, is that it's not really like you disappear, and it's just a channel. Yeah, and that's when the experience, I think, is really electric for me and for the student. And I think that's in essence how I do it. Now I've got a heck of a bookshelf too, and being able to walk over to the bookshelf and be like, ooh, let's pull out this one, that helps. Like a lifelong accumulation of like really fantastic materials is useful.
Couldn't agree more about the flow state there. I teach 7th grade. I actually don't teach music. I have a degree in music and have a degree in education, and I don't teach music. But I completely agree about that flow state, and it's why we teach. At least it's why I teach. What about you? What instruments or other things related to music do you teach, and how?
I feel like I pale in comparison. I'm a piano
You don't.
player. I'm a piano player. Been doing that since I was age 4. Piano. Nothing. I like why I still keep getting better every year, so I'm not going to leave and learn something else. That's my thought. Is like, okay, I still got a lot to learn. I don't teach piano currently. So what I'm teaching currently, since I'm at high school, and that is so incredibly draining, and there's nothing left of me after doing that, except for maybe a gig or two, like once a week. But choir. So the way that I teach it, I sometimes it's just rote. I've got choirs that range from 9 guys up to 45 mixed choir. Sometimes it's rote. Sometimes it's get your pencils out. We're going to write in the solfege. Then we're in the key of F. Here's this note. Write it in. You figure it out. I'll tell you if you're right. So I try to do a healthy dose of a bit of music theory. I don't teach music theory as a class. There is an advanced placement music theory at our school right now, and I would have enjoyed teaching that, but another one of my colleagues beat me to it because I'm a theory nerd. I think that's fun. But mostly it's a rote, and then you stand up and sing, and you put those 4 parts together, and when that flow state happens, the kids, when they hear 4-part harmony or 6 or 8 if it's a Debussy, and something clicks and the overtones and it rings, their eyes light up, and I think, okay, I win. I did what I was supposed to do, and it's pretty heavenly. And then at a concert, when it's all just coming out, and I'm not doing anything, I'm pretending, I'm waving and pointing, but it's pretty glorious.
She's come and performed at a couple of schools where I've taught, and I wish you hadn't told me that you weren't doing anything, because it really looked like you were doing things. It was really exciting.
Well, it has some meaning, but I tell the kids, I'm just going to wave my hands and follow. Yeah.
I'm curious then, what if there are any gaps in our music education offerings as a city or as a state? We're all based in Anchorage, by the way. What might those be, and how could we fill them? If we're talking about leveling up together, are there any gaps? And if so, what, and how can we fill them? Maybe going back from Melissa again.
That's kind of a tough question. I mean, in the school system right now, the gaps that I see aren't so much what is offered, because you can do choir, you can do band, you can do orchestra, you can do ukulele, you can do guitar, music. There's all these things that actually make it a little bit harder on my job, because maybe a kid doesn't want to have to stand up and be all perfect for Miss Fischer. I think I'll just go play uke. That'd be fun. That's chill. So there's like all these concerns from my perspective about fighting to have the right numbers. So I don't think we lack, at least from my perspective in high school, for offerings, but the gaps, that one way to use that term gap is the alignment between middle school to middle school or elementary to elementary. Is the kid from this elementary school who's going to middle school, does he have the same background and same musical knowledge once they're getting up there? And in ed world they call it alignment, Mm-hmm. So I'm feeling like the gaps are sometimes just an even ownership of musical exposure and background, i.e., or do you know how to sing correctly? Do you know what a B flat looks like, etc. So for me, the gaps are just the consistency
Yeah, it kind of
When I'll
reminds
get a
me.
kid from another school or another school district, I'm like, holy smokes, wow, who's teaching you? Or I get somebody they're clueless. They don't know anything musically. At the high school level, they should.
Kind of reminds me of the project behind the Common Core. Like, we have standards so that everyone getting to a certain place has the background they need to take full advantage of that educational opportunity. I think there are arguments for and against that, but I'm also really curious, Nick, what do you see? Are there gaps that we can fill in as a community?
There's something that I see where we have a little bit of a brain drain. I think that there's something about a more dense cosmopolitan environment that just acts on you. And for lots and lots of years up here, I just felt like, well, there's so much space to grow here, and you can really kind of be your own person, and you can really thrive on intrinsic motivation, and there's lots of room to do stuff. And then leaving to go to grad school on the East Coast, I kind of realized that in spite of my best intrinsic motivated efforts, that I had maybe stagnated a little bit compared to what I would have been in a more dense environment where, I become less of a versatilist and more of a specialist in a bigger city, because you got to really compete in one particular area to be the person who gets that call. And that does something to you. There's like a steel sharpens steel kind of thing. And I think a lot of our best and brightest in Alaska who are young people recognize that they're not gonna get that here like they're gonna get that in New York, LA, Nashville, Miami, which is where I went and had a really, robust experience that I felt like, really made me take myself to the next level. And I think it's very important that people leave and get out of here and do that. I think it's really great when they come back. And, I really saw, like, taking 10 years between doing undergrad and graduate school, that music education in general, jazz education specifically, progressed and evolved a lot in 10 years. Recently, a couple of young people have come back from doing school out of state with like crazy chops and ideas and very inspired stuff. I'm like, show me. I'm 5 years cold now. Like the time marches on out there, right? So music is always cusping into the next innovation and stuff. And nobody's going to be able to teach that innovation before it's happened and taken place. And I feel like sometimes we're a little bit back in time. Like people had asked me to oh, what's Anchorage like? Well, a patch of Seattle broke off, floated 1,500 miles north, lodged in South Central Alaska, but it's like 15 years back in time. And I feel like maybe that, in my youth that was true. Now maybe we've that gap's gotten a little bit smaller, right? But I think, I think that interacting with people out of state more, and especially when our young people go out of state to push hard and train themselves up and then come back to share. And one spot where I think we get in danger up here a little bit is that we get our kind of old guard of educators and stuff. And John Danberg, by the way, I need to mention his name while we're having this forum, because he's been the mentor for all seasons for me, and founded Alaska Jazz Workshop, to which I seem to be the heir apparent and stuff. But, one thing that we were really talking about in our recent grant things is this age stratification membership, because our society really tends to age stratify and sort of divide out. But like the high school kids are inspired by the college kids. They don't care about the old geezers so much. I mean, maybe a little bit, but, like trying to get the people in the middle and trying to get the 20-somethings mentoring the teens, and trying to get the 30-somethings mentoring the 20-somethings, as opposed to this, sort of like, well, here's your senior statesman, and they're going to tell you how it's done. Or trying to get that to blend a little bit more, right, and get some of those colors in between. Well, that's a long answer. I'll shut up.
No, that was great. It seems like the gap that you've identified is the disconnectedness. And that we can fix, that we can level up, we can work together on that project by having people talk across generations. I completely agree with that. Mary, what do you notice?
Well, I was thinking, like, when I was 10 years old, I accidentally was in a strings class, and I took strings while I was in elementary school, so it was 4th grade. And then I ended up in a middle school that had this amazing orchestra. I mean, if it hadn't been for any of that stuff, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. I had this amazing orchestra teacher who worked with the choir, who worked with the drama people, and we would put on productions every year. And then there was also this whole folk music thing that was going on at the same time. So each part was teaching each, for me, I was paying attention to both cultures, basically. And sometimes I say, like, people, they took away 4th graders playing in the schools, And I think that I go, if there's 30 kids in the class when I was in 4th grade, and I'm the only one that still plays, was it worth it to offer that class? And I have to say yes. If you have one child in there that's gonna like take it to the next level, or even if they're not, if they're just gonna remember how good it was and how fun it was playing music, it's worth it, And I think another thing that I have, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I feel like in the school system that there's a real focus on playing classical, playing exact, playing what's on the paper, as Alistair Fraser would say, the dots on the paper, because he's all about like learning things by ear, and I think that if there was somehow a way to bring in traditional music into the schools, I think that would be great. That would be my vote, but I don't want to take all of the choir people away, though. It's
Right.
How do you do that? I don't know.
I don't know if it's a zero-sum game. I think there's probably an opportunity for us to find room for everything that would benefit kids. At least I hope there is. Marian, how are we doing on time? I see that, but I don't know how much you want me to go over.
Oh, are we going over?
It looks like she's walking towards the front. All right, can we? Oh, yes.
I just want to mention something that has been lost and is a real lack in education in the Anchorage community and actually statewide, and that is in support of all these artists. We lost funding for the University of Alaska a few years ago, and they cut the theater program.
That's right.
at UAA. And with that cut, lighting design, sound design, sound engineering, all the elements, also set design, costume design, props design, all of that is theatrical, but is also very much in support of the festivals you've been hearing about, and my field itself, sound engineering. You might have noticed the average age of sound engineers and the skin color. I have been working so hard, I've been working so hard to try to inspire young people that performing takes many, many shapes and forms. And some of us perform as artists by being conduits for the voices on the other side of the microphone, for the people who stand under the lights. We have lost training in the state of Alaska for technical artistry. And those people now pretty much have to leave and often don't come back. If you know a young person who is not of the spirit or energy to be on that side of the microphone, but they love this world, please encourage them, because talking about brain drain and skill drain, that's my life right now, is watching people slip away.
Thank you, Lucy. Seems like this here that the amazing people at MusicAlaska have put together is actually one way to fill in the gaps. It seems like Lucy just mentioned, there are people who are willing to mentor and educate anyone who's got an interest. I think that's a great way to end it. Please thank these three panelists.
Yes, thank you so much. You can chill out. We're gonna do some more talking here, but then we'll do a breakout group on education. I just want to mention, Michael, in continuing what you and Lucy both mentioned. I like you.
There's a conference going on.
Okay. I'll see you tomorrow night at the Jazz Jam at the bakery. But Monday night, sorry. I don't know what day it is. Don't ask me. We are not interested in conversations about music that omit the discontent. there's plenty to go around right now. We're not interested in conversations that tread the same complaints we have trodden every time we meet. I think I've mentioned this every year, and I never get over how much every time I come back to Anchorage, people are still talking about the taproot. And that tells me though that that tells me that we haven't found ways to turn our discontent into something useful. And I don't blame us, because frankly, a lot of forces are arrayed against us. The topic we're moving into from education is policy. And I know people's eyes cross when I say that, because we've all been thinking about policy, I think, quite a bit too much. But let me invite you to consider that music policy is a little bit refreshing in that it's a little bit smaller and easier to get your brain around. It still impacts us, but there are places to push on it. And those places can be productive, because music is always going to be with us, and policy impacts how it affects us. Music education policy is one of the first and foremost, most important things. Funding for the university, funding for our schools. And I think we're all feeling now the impacts of the state legislature that is not engaging music policy, that is not engaging with the problems, with the funding problems attendant to education. They've neglected them long enough, and I know a lot of people who are not interested in state politics who have suddenly become very interested this year because the schools are closing. Suddenly it's hitting, oh, the laws they make do in fact impact us. And I think we're going to see a lot of people up and moving and ready to make some changes. What I'm interested in is how we can pivot our discontent into a positive energy that does not turn on one another, but that moves forward in solidarity and that is productive. And with that, we're going to do just a tiny bit of 101 about, policy in general, but music policy too, because I don't know if you've thought about policy issues that impact us as musicians, but there are quite a few. One of the ones that impacts the musicians I know the most is our alcohol laws in the state of Alaska. The alcohol laws were recently rewritten, as some of you may know. A tasting room or a tap room could not have any music. It was illegal. You still technically can't play cards, although they haven't stopped me yet. But now you can play 4 events per year with a special permit, which is supposed to be awarded in 3 days, but which in my experience takes about 20 to get. And that makes it very hard to sell tickets for an event. But it's interesting to me that there were bodies that were able to sit around and deliberate, well, how many times a year can musicians play in your venue? I want 6. Well, I want 3. Well, we're settling on 4. And no musicians were at the table, right? This was CHAR and tasting rooms and tap rooms, Brewers Guild, arguing between themselves about our industry. That's regulatory capture of a totally unrelated industry, right? So what would it look like for musicians to have a body that pushes back on that, a body that can walk into those conversations? That's what music offices do, and that means that's what MusicAlaska is starting to walk into learning how to do. We are new at this, but we are doing it. Like I said, we put our fancy festival brochure with 80 festivals into the packet of every legislator this year, and I'm going to be walking around shaking hands with them along with some of our Juno members. So, alcohol is an example of something that impacts us, and funding for state education, those impact us at the state level, right? So if you wanted to impact those, you would go to the state legislature. But there's a lot of other things that impact us, right? AI and streaming royalties are 2 of the biggest concerns facing musicians. These are existential threats for certain genres. These are existential threats for certain professions. You brought up technicians. The price of mastering a track for people who do sort of industrial level mastering. We have a wonderful, wonderful audio engineer in Juneau doing incredible work, especially in hip hop. And the price of mastering for him went in 3 years from $500 to $100 to $10. That is the price that people will pay in 3 years. That's a complete collapse of value, right? And that's something that, frankly, is impacted at the federal level. There are no laws about our rights to our music or our copyright kind of being used to train these things because it's amalgamated. And interestingly, if any laws about AI come about that sort of like channel it into a productive use, those are probably going to come from music and film, because movie stars and recording stars are the ones who have the clout to move that forward. So the Recording Academy is music's kind of like negotiating body at the federal level. So when you're talking federal laws, the Recording Academy is who represents musicians. I became a member this year. Ashley Young has just applied for membership. I know Peter Ratner here is a member. I know, Engel, are you a member? What? We never talked about this. Carrie's a member? Yeah. It's possible to be a member of the Recording Academy and actually get to work on advocacy at the federal level. I did this year. I spoke with Mary Peltola's office about a bill that was in front of the House. I called Murkowski's office and we talked about global diplomacy from Alaska to the rest of the pole through music and what that would look like through the new Arctic ambassador. Those are things that you can do in a Recording Academy capacity. The last thing I want to mention is municipal action, right? I realize I'm not an Anchorage resident, full disclosure. I was for 10 years, but I've been in Juneau for 11 now, I'm sorry. It's nice, but we don't have good ramen. So I keep coming back. But you guys have faced a really turbulent, and you have experienced firsthand what a turbulent municipal government environment looks like. And right now you're facing things like maybe a sales tax, big decisions for the muni. And some of these impact musicians. Some of the most important ones are, for example, decisions about whether to have an Anchorage Arts Council or what that might look like. As well as like support for music festivals and making sure they interact well and play well with the city. So we're going to talk about this more in a breakout. We're going to talk about federal and state more in a breakout, but we happen to have here both an Anchorage Assembly member and musician and music educator. Will you join me? George, thank you so much for coming today. You can stand or sit, whatever you feel.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Yeah.
All right. What's up, everybody?
I appreciate you, George.
Right on.
There's been a couple years where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm glad he's there. So I talked a lot. Now I want to listen to you tell me about if people care about policy issues in Anchorage, what is step one to effectively making something happen?
Mm-hmm. Right on. Thank you for the setup. Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. Good to be with you all today. It's a privilege to be here with you on the ancestral land of the Dena'ina Athabascans, whose stewardship once was and remains today. My name is George Martinez. I am a member of the Anchorage Assembly. I represent the East Side. So if you're an East Sider, holla. But as one of the 12 members of the Anchorage Assembly, we are responsible for what happens in the municipality. Just one footnote, the Anchorage Assembly is not responsible or debating the implementation of a sales tax. We, just for political clarity, are in a ballot access role, which means how do things get on a ballot? Well, citizens can petition and have direct ballot access if you want to run a ballot initiative. That's how you get on the ballot. Or the other way is assembly members vote on things to get on the ballot. So the sales tax question is only whether or not you all will be voting on it. Ultimately, voters will decide any of these questions. The clarity is important. But I start off with that because Marian was talking earlier, and one of the slides that she showed was this slide of sustainability, and it had these interesting rafts, and it had like the job raft in the middle, which is really cool because I'm going to do a census and I'm going to get back around to that. How many of you all are regular voters in municipal elections? Right on. How many remember pre-vote by mail and continue to use vote by mail? Right on. How many only remember or only know vote by mail? That's cool too. So how many know our municipal elections are nonpartisan? How many know what that means? And I'm not being facetious, but I'm going into a level of, the question was, how do we get change? I wrote down, if we want to change or see things, then what happens? All right, why are you musicians? Let me start off with my story and even how I get to here, because it's all relevant. I'm from the hip hop culture and a hip hop community that saw concrete sidewalks in blighted communities that were the results of the war on poverty from the economic disenfranchisement of black and brown communities in inner city cores from the 50s, 60s, 70s. So I'm from there, right? So where we saw a cardboard box being thrown on a sidewalk and the trash wasn't being collected in our communities, some folks took the cardboard boxes and transformed the sidewalks into dance studios, while others took the trash and created garbage strikes. The act of resistance was built into both. The creative energy behind the hip hop community was to be without any formal training and to just take what we had, the original stone soup of the hood. Bring what you have. And that's why at the core of it, it's everything speaking for itself, everyone bringing it together. But my political journey starts off with that recognition that we were already challenging status quo, already acting like, what do we want to see? Which is the fundamental question. But we didn't ask any political powers. We just created the manifestation of, this is what I have, let's go do that. As you advance throughout that conversation, the core of Public Enemy's Fight the Power song for me resonates. The core of when hip hop was at the front edge of the movement against apartheid, that was also populated by popular television like The Cosby Show at the time, that had popular culture showing young African Americans and black folks in the United States using popular culture to say, we are in solidarity with the world against apartheid. We stood in solidarity against AIDS when it was, we are the world and let's get together. And there were rappers in there and the energy of the urban vibe and the music vibe. There's a movie out, Bob Dylan. Who's more political than Bob Dylan? And so the essence of politics, of change making, is always built in. But what I tend to find is that even early on in my journey, when I took tools to basically say, well, if I can petition my government for redress of grievances, and I did that, and it goes nowhere, then what? Well, if I'm a hip hop organizer or a promoter or a performer, I know how to get people to a station, to a venue. And if I can get 100 people to turn out to a party, well, East Anchorage elections, this year, one of them was decided by less than 200 votes. And last time, and it was a flip of an election that last time was decided by less than 100 votes. So, my early political environment was, if I could throw a jam, we can affect the outcome of an election. Block party immediately. So that's the most hip hop relationship. I've had the journey to go from a New York context. I've worked for state governments. I've also been an appointed United States cultural envoy, official hip hop ambassador through the United States Department of State internationally. So that governments understand how to use and connect with the creative energies of our community to create outcomes is already happening. That there are many in our communities that are invested all you have in the art, beyond comprehensible, rational choice, political science calculus. There was no money on that screen where you showed the slides of how much money people make that say that you should continue to do this if you don't have real love. Because it costs a lot to just do it in the first place. One of the educators just mentioned, I don't know who's listening, but that one person may be listening. Let me tell you something more. Don't even calculate the way it was calculated, like who's going to do what in the pathway. A musical note will change the heart of a person and you'll never know when it's activated. Just keep making music, right? And keep teaching and keep being there. So what we're doing these things, my connection back now is, I have not given up the creative energy. I continue to bring these things forward, but my journey through political literacy and educating community gives an opportunity for me to also be present as an elected official who's from within this creative community, but who sees some of the real opportunities for us in the municipality. And there are some opportunities, and I'll close with this before we go into a broader discussion, but the siloing of, you all know this intra, so the siloing of each other across the different artists creates a problem. And I'll use hip hop as an example. Hip hop is created from 5 original elements. The 5 original elements are the MC, not a rapper, because rappers are for candies and Christmas gifts. But an MC means a microphone controller and a person that can move the crowd. An organizer, essentially. A DJ. But in the traditional roots of a DJ, it is an ancestral connection to the drum. It is our percussionist, the universal sound. But we took James Brown records without copyright permission. We didn't have a turntable, it was grandma's, and they were mad because the records were getting scratched. But that technical innovation of the DJ pushing that created the MP3 technology that was first captured in digital turntables where they can create a sample of the loop and the break beat. Break it down, the break beat, break dancing is all connected. The other elements, the graffiti artist, the visual. The other elements, the dance. We see a lot of that in Anchorage, a lot of b-boys, b-girls, a lot of energy. But the 5th one is knowledge, the education. Yes, and if I talk to rappers in Anchorage, I just described the culture that they call hip hop. They don't know any of the other elements. And the other elementalists don't know each other either. How true is that across everybody else's sector? But the reality is, I want to do, as the chair of the Community and Economic Development Committee for the Anchorage Assembly, I'm also, 10 years ago, was a special assistant to former Mayor Berkowitz. And in that role, I created the conversation around what would it look like if Anchorage fully understood the creative economies as one of its pillars, not as an afterthought or as something that was a leftover thing. We're getting closer there because the work that you've done with the census was funded by the municipality through ARPA grants. So the relationship of the dollars to the outcomes we want to see is happening. That's good news. But Marian also described constituency building. So constituency building is making sure that you're not relying on any one person who may happen to be aligned with your interests, because it's not how it works in government. My time will come to a quick end. So will Marian's, and it's all about what we're embedding in how we're building past the silos. And through my role, I want to raise Destination Anchorage as one of the things, and you described the nightlife economy as another really important sector. And I think from there, we're going to have some really good opportunities to revisit a lot of the local laws, a lot of the things that we can do as a municipality to create the environment for success. And for that vibe, that, oh man, that one educator, who was Nick, I think was up here. If he took off right on, but he mentioned the density vibe. Oh man, the density vibe. I'm from Brooklyn, but I've lived all over the world and I've been here way long enough to know that we create the density by helping to create space. What was this? You all know, the Church of Love meets an abandoned building meets people coming in here like, I don't know, let's figure it out and imagine. And so there are those opportunities all over our city too, to think through zoning, planning, and the development of the actual physical infrastructure that can give rise to the place that when people come, they can feel. And I'll close with this. My final act of community service before I got really into government here locally was I was the co-founder of the Anchorage Artists Co-op, which at the Key Bank created an art gallery space that before it was redone, this is a decade ago, and it was when the city was changing trash cans. They were changing the basket trash cans to bear-proof trash cans downtown because we didn't want homeless people digging through the trash cans. And I saw them, before I even worked for the administration, saw them and said to myself, that's the ugliest shit ever. And they want to talk about bringing things downtown. Everyone who thought this was a good idea is, I said New York words to describe it. But my disposition, even at that time, and I continue to hope that people take this energy, is to say, like Ziggy, Shit, give me some paint. And so I took the initiative, got some community folks together, and it created a partnership with the Downtown Partnership that funded the art gallery for a year, and it created these other opportunities. So you never even know what opportunities don't exist because you don't see them, just because you may have not even pushed the threshold yet. Let's get into discussions. Thank you all.
All right, yeah. I love it. And what you're making me think of is that a whole lot of our problems, not just in music, in the world in general, come from a lot of people having, actually a very few people, having an interest in our alienation from each other and structurally building our alienation from each other in. So it is harder to have that organically connected culture. And the ways in which we resist that, any ways at all, are going to be moving this boulder in the right direction. We are going to do a slightly different breakout now. Right. We have 3 breakouts this time. I think I even have slides for them. Woo! Yes, here we go. All right. We want to continue that discussion on music education. And like I said, it is okay to bring your discontent to that discussion because I think we kind of need that right now. I think it might be productive right now to both to share, to sympathize, to build affiliation, and to think about what we can do, both to serve kids right this moment and to change the situation. We are also doing a continued discussion of policy. We didn't quite have time for all of our guests in policy, but we are honored to have Timmy Dolan, our Northwest Recording Academy representative, with us up again this year. I'm so glad you came.
Wait.
To hear from you this time.
Hey, all right. I was looking all around.
And we're going to talk a little bit about music policy on the federal level and activism there, what that looks like for Alaskans. We're also going to talk with Miles Baker. Miles, where are you? Give me a wave. There we go. Yeah, Miles happens to be both a lobbyist and have worked in the music industry for a very long time and actually cares a lot about the arts. It's going to tell us a little bit about acting on the Alaska State Legislature, when and how, some of the specifics, because that matters. Procedure, all those little processes, those matter. That's the round table. We are going to do both of those in this room, unplugged, chairs circle up on opposite corners. We used to do this all the time. We always managed back in the day. So yeah, just unplugged, circle up, chairs for those 2 groups. There's one more group though, I want to tell you. If you're not interested in either of those, Alaskans are so big on big ideas. Let me just say, every time we have this, 10 of you come up to me and tell me about the big new idea for a new venue, a new collaboration, for an iceberg floating flotilla of penguin musicians, whatever. But I think that I'm amazed how often they're executed and really interested in what makes them sustainable and continue on. So we've got a bunch of people in this group who specifically have done great, big, crazy ideas that are continuing to go on. And right now they want to hear yours. So this is kind of a brainstorming session. Get your big idea out, get some input on it. We're going to reconvene here at, I want to say 3:50 for closing remarks. So we'll give it a little bit longer just to talk with each other. 3:50, we're going to come back here. We're going to close out for just 5 or 10 minutes. And then you guys are welcome to continue talking, but we're going to start transitioning into Spinard's second Saturday, the night market that is in here after tonight with music. I shall send you out hence, ready, go, breakout.